The giant space station floating above Earth looked like a crystal castle made of light. Inside its main hall, hundreds of alien beings sat in their special chairs. Some had blue skin, others had tentacles instead of arms. A few looked like walking rocks with glowing eyes. They were all waiting to see what the humans had brought them. Ambassador Taiho walked slowly to the center of the hall. His hands were shaking, but he tried to hide it. Behind him, a huge screen showed pictures of Earth's first spaceship that could travel faster than light. The ship was called Phoenix 1. The aliens looked at the pictures and started to whisper to each other. Then someone laughed. Soon more aliens were laughing. The sound filled the huge hall like thunder. "Look at that ugly thing," said a creature with 4 arms and purple skin. "It looks like a metal box with engines stuck on it." "My children make better toys than that," said another alien who looked like a giant bug. Taiho felt his face get hot. He had worked for 3 years to get this meeting. Earth had sent its best engineers and scientists to build Phoenix 1. Now these advanced beings were laughing at their work like it was a joke. The leader of the aliens stood up. He was tall and thin with 4 eyes that glowed like stars. His name was Chancellor Vexstar, and he was the most powerful being in the galaxy. "Humans," he said in a voice that sounded like music, "your people have only just learned to leave your own planet. You still use fire and explosions to power your ships. This machine you built is dangerous and stupid." The other aliens nodded and made sounds of agreement. Some of them had ships that could cross the galaxy in days. Their technology was thousands of years ahead of anything humans had ever made. "We will watch your demonstration," Chancellor Vexatar continued. "But do not expect us to be impressed. Your ship will probably explode before it leaves the dock." More laughter filled the hall. Taiho wanted to run away and hide. Instead, he pressed a button on his small device. "Begin the test," he said quietly. In the docking bay below, Phoenix 1 sat like a wounded animal. The ship was not pretty to look at. Its metal sides were covered with patches and welds. Thick cables ran along its outside like scars. Steam came out of small holes in its hull. Inside the ship, 50 brave humans sat in their seats. They had volunteered to be the first people to test faster-than-light travel. Captain Minho sat in the front chair. He was a fighter pilot who had never been afraid of anything. Next to him sat Navigator So Young. She was the smartest person on the ship and knew more about space than most aliens. "Are you ready?" Minho asked his crew through the speaker system. "Ready, Captain," they all said together. Minho looked at the big red button that would start the engines. His hand moved toward it slowly. He knew that everyone in the galaxy was watching. If this worked, humans would join the great civilizations among the stars. If it failed, Earth would be a joke forever. He pressed the button. The engines roared, to life with a sound like a dragon waking up. The whole ship shook so hard that the crew's teeth rattled. Warning lights flashed red and yellow all over the control panels. The air itself seemed to vibrate. Up in the meeting hall, the aliens watched the screens that showed what was happening in the docking bay. They could see Phoenix 1 shaking like a leaf in a storm. Smoke began to pour out of the engines. "This is even worse than I expected," said the bug-like alien. "Look how it shakes. Our cargo ships are more stable than that." The shaking got worse. Inside Phoenix 1, Captain Minho held onto his chair with white knuckles. The ship's computer was making loud beeping sounds that meant trouble. "Engine temperature rising," called out Engineer Junseo from the back of the ship. His voice was full of worry. "I can see that," Minho said through gritted teeth. The whole control panel was covered with red warning lights. Then something went very wrong. A bright flash of light filled the passenger area. The air suddenly became very hot. Someone screamed. The smell of burning metal and plastic filled the ship. "Fire in the passenger section," So Young shouted into her microphone. The aliens in the hall leaned forward in their chairs. On the screens, they could see smoke pouring out of Phoenix 1. Small explosions flashed inside the ship like lightning. The humans inside were running around, trying to put out the fires. "Get us back to the dock," Minho ordered. His uniform was smoking where sparks had hit it. Phoenix 1 limped back to its parking space like a hurt dog. More smoke poured out as the engines finally stopped. The docking bay filled with the sounds of fire alarms and people shouting. Emergency crews in white suits ran to the ship. They pulled out the 50 passengers, many of whom were coughing and covered in soot. Some had burns on their hands and faces. Captain Minho came out last, his hair singed and his uniform torn. The great hall of aliens was completely quiet for a moment. Then the laughter started again, louder than before. "That was even funnier than I hoped," said the purple alien, with 4 arms. "They set their own ship on fire? Did you see how it shook?" laughed another creature that looked like a walking tree. "I thought it was going to fall apart before it even moved." Chancellor Vextar raised one of his 4 hands, and the laughter slowly stopped. His glowing eyes looked at Ambassador Tejo with something that might have been pity. "Humans," he said in his musical voice. "This demonstration has shown us exactly what we expected. Your technology is primitive and dangerous. Your ship caught fire with passengers still inside. Even your flying machines on your home planet work. Better than this." The other aliens nodded and made sounds of agreement. Some of them were still chuckling. "Perhaps you should go back to your small planet and practice more," the Chancellor continued. "Come back in a few hundred years when you have learned to build ships that do not try to kill their own crews." Ambassador Tejo felt like his heart was breaking. He had put everything into this moment. The best minds on Earth had worked day and night to build Phoenix 1. Now it was all ruined. The entire galaxy thought humans were stupid and weak. But as he looked at the screen showing the docking bay, he saw something that made him feel a little better. Captain Minho was standing up straight despite his burns. Navigator So Young was helping the injured crew members. All 50 passengers were alive, and most of them were already talking about what went wrong and how to fix it. They had failed, but they were not giving up. That was the human way. Tejo looked back at the aliens who were still laughing and making jokes. He bowed politely, even though he wanted to shout at them. "Thank you for watching our demonstration," he said. "This is only the beginning." As he walked out of the great hall, he could hear the aliens laughing behind him. But he also heard something else. Whispers. Some of the aliens were talking quietly about the humans who had survived a fire in space and were already planning to try again. Maybe they were not as impressed as they pretended to be. The news came back to Earth like a slap in the face. Every television, computer, and phone showed the same terrible pictures. Phoenix 1 smoking and burning. Human passengers running out of the ship with their clothes on fire. Aliens laughing and pointing at Earth's failed spaceship. Director Haiwan stood in her office and watched the news reports. Her heart felt heavy like a stone. Outside her window, she could see protesters holding signs that said, "Stop wasting money on space and fix Earth first." The phone on her desk rang every few minutes. Politicians wanted to know why they had spent so much money on a ship that caught fire. Reporters wanted to know if anyone was going to jail. Her own mother called to ask if she was okay. "Maybe we should just give up," said her assistant, looking tired and sad. "Everyone thinks we are crazy now." Heywan shook her head. "No, we do not give up. That is not what humans do. But giving up might not be her choice." The Global Space Consortium was meeting that afternoon, and they controlled all the money for the Phoenix Project. If they decided to stop funding, there would be no more ships, no more dreams of traveling to the stars. The meeting room was full of angry people in expensive suits. They sat around a long table and stared at Heywan like she had broken their favorite toy. "Director Heywan," said Chairman Park, his voice cold as ice, "please explain to us why we should continue this project. Your ship caught fire. People were hurt. The whole galaxy is laughing at us." Heywan stood up slowly. She had prepared a speech, but now all her words seemed to disappear. Instead, she spoke from her heart. "Yes, Phoenix 1 failed. Yes, people were hurt. But they are alive. All 50 passengers survived a fire in space and came home. That is not failure. That is learning." "Learning?" said another man at the table. "Learning what? How to waste money? How to embarrass our planet? Learning how to build better ships," Heywan said firmly. "Every great invention started with failures. The first airplane crashed. The first car broke down. The first computer was as big as a house and barely worked. But people did not give up. "This is different," Chairman Park said. "We are not competing with other humans now. We are competing with aliens who have technology thousands of years ahead of us. Maybe we should just accept that we are not ready." Hei-Wan felt anger rise in her chest. The aliens think we are primitive and stupid. Maybe they are right about our technology, but they are wrong about us. Humans do not quit because something is hard. The men and women around the table whispered to each other. Some looked interested, others looked skeptical. Finally, Chairman Park spoke again. "You have 6 months," he said. 6 months to show us real progress. If you cannot prove that this project has value, we will shut it down forever." Hei-Wan bowed deeply. "Thank you. 6 months is enough." But as she walked out of the building, she wondered if she had just lied to herself. Meanwhile, in a small hospital room, Captain Minho lay in bed with bandages on his arms and face. The burns were not serious, but they hurt. More than the pain in his body, though, was the pain in his heart. He felt like he had let down his entire species. Navigator So Young sat in a chair next to his bed. She had burns too, but not as bad. Her hands were wrapped in white bandages and she could not use her fingers very well. "The news people want to interview us," she said quietly. "They want to know how it feels to be part of the biggest failure in human history." Minho tried to laugh, but it hurt his chest. "Biggest failure? I do not think so. We flew a ship with a faster-than-light engine. It caught fire, but it worked for a few seconds. That is more than any human has ever done before." The aliens do not think so. They think we are like children playing with matches. "Let them think that," Minho said, his eyes getting bright with determination. "Children who play with matches sometimes start fires, but they also sometimes light torches that show the way forward." So Young smiled for the first time since the accident. "You want to try again, do not you?" "Of course I want to try again, do you?" She looked at her bandaged hands. "Yes, but we need to understand what went wrong first." Across the city, in a small laboratory, engineer Jiwoo was already working on that problem. She had not slept in 3 days. Her desk was covered with papers, computer screens, and empty coffee cups. Her team was there too, even though it was past midnight. "The plasma containment matrix failed here," said Dongwoo, pointing at a diagram on the wall. He was the team's expert on materials, and he knew more about metal and plastic than anyone else on Earth. "Why did it fail?" asked Yoonji. She was a physicist who studied the strangest parts of science, things that most people could not even pronounce. "The heat was too much," Dongwoo explained. "Our materials could not handle the energy we were creating." "Then we need better materials," said Hyunwoo. He was the engineer who designed systems and made sure all the parts worked together. Jiwoo rubbed her tired eyes. "Better materials cost money. Money we might not have much longer." "Then we need to be smarter," Yoonji said. "Maybe we do not need better materials. Maybe we need a better design." They worked through the night, drawing diagrams and running calculations. Every few hours, one of them would have an idea. They would get excited, work on it for hours, then realize it would not work. But they did not give up. By morning, they had filled 3 whiteboards with equations and drawings. None of them had solved the problem, but they understood it better now. "The aliens use completely different technology," Jiwoo said as the sun came up. "They use crystals and energy fields that we do not understand. We are trying to copy them, but maybe that is wrong." "What do you mean?" asked Dongwoo. "Maybe we should not try to build ships like theirs. Maybe we should build ships like ours, human ships. Ships that work the way humans think." The others looked at her with confusion and interest. "Explain," said Hyunwoo. Jiwoo stood up and walked to the whiteboard. She drew a simple picture of Phoenix 1. "The ship failed because we tried to make it work like an alien ship. But we are not aliens. We think differently. We solve problems differently. Maybe our ships should be different too." "Different how?" asked Unji. "I do not know yet. But I think the answer is not in copying alien technology. The answer is in understanding human technology better. Over the next few weeks, news reporters kept showing the burning ship on television. Comedians made jokes about humans who could not even keep their own spaceship from catching fire. Some countries said they wanted to leave the Phoenix Project and spend their money on other things. But in the small laboratory, Jiwoo and her team kept working. They studied every piece of data from the failed flight. They tested new ideas on small models. They failed many times, but each failure taught them something new. Captain Minho got better and left the hospital. Navigator So Young healed too. All 50 passengers from the first flight met together once a week. They called themselves the Phoenix Survivors, and they all had the same dream: to try again. "We are not giving up," Minho told a reporter who asked him about the accident. "Humans do not quit just because something is hard. We learn from our mistakes and try again." The reporter asked, "But what if you fail again? What if people get hurt?" Minho looked directly at the camera. "Then we will learn from that too. That is what makes us human. We do not stop trying just because we are afraid." Far away on distant planets across the galaxy, some aliens watched the human news reports. Most of them still thought humans were funny and primitive, but a few of them noticed something interesting. These humans had failed badly, but they were not giving up. They were working harder than before. They were determined to succeed, even when everyone told them it was impossible. That was not normal behavior for most species. When other races failed as badly as the humans had failed, they usually accepted defeat and tried something easier. But humans seemed to think that failure was just the first step toward success. Some aliens found this interesting. Others found it disturbing. All of them would remember it later. 2 years passed like a long, hard winter. Every day, Jiwoo and her team worked in their small laboratory. They had tried hundreds of different ideas. Most of them failed. Some of them failed so badly that they had to rebuild parts of the lab. The world outside had mostly forgotten about the Phoenix Project. The news stopped talking about space travel. Politicians found other things to argue about. Most people thought the dream of reaching the stars was dead. But Jiwoo never stopped working. Her hair had more gray in it now. Her eyes were always tired from staring at computer screens and equations. But her hands never stopped moving, never stopped building and testing and trying new things. "Maybe we should give up," said Hyunwoo. One evening, he was sitting at his desk looking at another failed test result. "We have been working for 2 years. We are not any closer to solving the problem." "We are closer," Jiwoo said firmly. "Every failure teaches us something. We know 100 ways that do not work. That means we are closer to finding the way that does work." Dongwoo looked up from his materials testing station. "The government money runs out in 3 months. If we do not have results by then, they will shut us down for good." "Then we work harder," said Yoonji. She was writing equations on a whiteboard that was already covered with numbers and symbols. "The answer is here somewhere. We just have to find it." The breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning at exactly 9:47 a.m. It happened because of an accident. Dongwoo was testing a new type of metal containment system. He was supposed to use pure titanium, like they had used in all the previous tests. But he made a mistake. Instead of pure titanium, he grabbed a sample that had rare earth elements mixed into it. These elements came from mines deep in the earth, and they were very expensive. "Wait," Jiwoo said as she watched him prepare the test. "That is not the right metal." Dongwoo looked at the sample in his hand. "Oh no, you are right. I grabbed the wrong one. Let me get the correct sample." "No." "Wait," said Yoonji suddenly. "Let us try it anyway. What is the worst that could happen?" "It could explode," Hyunwoo said nervously. "So could the right metal," Yoonji pointed out. "We have had plenty of explosions already." Jiwoo thought for a moment. They had been following the same procedures for months, always getting the same disappointing results. Maybe it was time to try something different. "Do it," she said. "But everyone stand back. If this goes wrong, I do not want anyone to get hurt." Dongwoo placed the metal sample into the plasma containment chamber. The chamber was much smaller than the one they had used in Phoenix 1, but it worked the same way. Hot plasma would be contained inside the metal walls while Yunji's quantum field generators tried to control it. Starting the plasma sequence, Dongwu announced. The machine hummed to life. On their computer screens, they could see the energy readings start to climb. Temperature gauges showed the heat building up inside the chamber. This looks normal so far, Yunwu said, reading the numbers. But then something strange happened. Instead of the energy readings going up and down like they always did, they started to level off. The temperature stopped climbing and stayed steady. That is weird, Yunji said, frowning at her screens. The quantum field is not fighting the plasma anymore. It is like they are working together. Look at the efficiency numbers, Jiwoo said, her voice full of excitement. We are getting twice as much energy output as we put in. That is impossible, Yunwu said. Energy cannot be created from nothing. But the numbers did not lie. The system was producing more energy than it was consuming. Not only that, but it was stable. No dangerous fluctuations, no warning alarms, just smooth, steady power that was stronger than anything they had ever seen. Turn it off, Jiwoo said quietly. Right now, before something goes wrong. Dongwu shut down the plasma generator. The energy readings dropped to 0. The chamber cooled down. Everything returned to normal. For a long moment, nobody spoke. They all stared at the computer screens that still showed the impossible test results. Did that really just happen? Hyunwoo asked. Run the test again, Jiwoo said. Same metal, sample, same settings. Let us see if we can do it twice. The second test gave them the same results. So did the third test, and the fourth. Each time, the system produced more energy than it used. Each time it stayed perfectly stable and safe. I do not understand how this works, Yunji said, scratching her head. According to everything we know about physics, this should not be possible. Maybe that is exactly why it works, Jiwoo said slowly. Maybe we have been thinking about this problem the wrong way. She walked over to the whiteboard and started drawing. The aliens use pure energy fields to control their plasma. They have perfect materials that never break down. Everything they do is clean and precise. Yes, so? Dongwu asked. So maybe that is their weakness. Maybe they are too perfect. Maybe they never learned to work with imperfect materials like we have to use. She drew a diagram showing the rare earth elements mixed into the titanium. These impurities in our metal are not a bug. They are a feature. They create tiny variations in the containment field that actually help control the plasma better. Like how a rough surface grips better than a smooth one, Hyunwoo suggested. Exactly. The aliens have smooth, perfect technology. We have rough, imperfect technology. But sometimes rough works better than smooth. Over the next month, they tested different combinations of metals and rare earth elements. Each combination gave them different results, but many of them worked better than the pure materials they had been using before. The best combination used elements that could only be found on Earth. Iron from meteorites that had crashed into their planet millions of years ago. Rare metals from deep ocean vents. Crystals that formed in places where lightning had struck the ground thousands of times. It is like the Earth itself is helping us build this engine, Dongwu said one day as he examined a particularly successful test sample. Maybe it is, Jiwoo replied. Maybe this is why we humans are different from the aliens. We come from a planet that is rough and chaotic and full of imperfections. Maybe that taught us how to work with imperfect systems instead of against them. Word of their breakthrough spread quickly through the small community of Phoenix Project survivors. Captain Minho came to visit the laboratory, walking slowly because his burns still bothered him sometimes. Show me, he said simply. They ran the test for him and his eyes grew wide as he watched the impossible energy readings on the computer screens. This is it, is not it? He asked. This is how we get to the stars. This is how we start, Jiwoo corrected. We still need to build a ship around this engine. We still need to test it in space. We still need to prove that it can carry people safely. How long? Minho asked. 6 months to build Phoenix 2. Maybe 8 months if we want to. Be extra careful. Minho smiled, and for the first time in 2 years it was a smile full of hope instead of determination. Then let us build it, he said. The galaxy is waiting for us to surprise them. In her office across the city, Director Hei-Wan received a phone call that changed everything. Director, Ji-Woo said, her voice shaking with excitement. We did. We solved the problem. We are ready to build Phoenix 2. Hei-Wan sat down slowly. She had been preparing for another failure, another disappointment. This good news felt almost too good to believe. Are you certain? She asked. I am certain this new engine is not just better than the old one. It is better than anything the aliens have. We are going to shock the entire galaxy. For the first time in 2 years, Hei-Wan allowed herself to hope that humans might actually reach the stars. 8 months later, Ambassador Tejo stood in the same great hall where humans had been laughed at before. This time felt different, but he was not sure if it was better or worse. The aliens looked just as bored and amused as they had 3 years ago. Phoenix 2 sat in the docking bay below, and it looked even worse than Phoenix 1 had looked. The new ship was covered in patches and welds. Thick cables ran along its outside like metal snakes. Parts of it were painted different colors because they had run out of matching paint. Steam came out of small holes in its sides. Did they learn nothing from their first embarrassment? Asked the purple alien with 4 arms. His voice was full of laughter. Look at that ugly thing, said the bug-like creature. It looks like they built it from garbage and spare parts. Chancellor Vextar raised one of his 4 hands, and the hall became quiet. His glowing eyes looked at Tejo with what might have been pity. Humans, he said in his musical voice. We remember your last demonstration. Your ship caught fire with passengers inside. People were hurt. Why should we waste our time watching you fail again? Tejo felt his heart beating fast, but his voice was calm when he spoke. Honored Chancellor, we have learned from our mistakes. Phoenix 2 is built with new technology. We believe you will find it interesting. The aliens whispered to each other and made sounds that were probably laughter. Some of them were already getting up to leave. Very well, the Chancellor said. We will watch, but make it quick. We have important business to discuss after this entertainment is over. In Phoenix 2, Admiral Minho sat in the captain's chair. His burns had healed completely, but he still had small scars on his hands that reminded him of the first disaster. Next to him, Navigator So-Young checked her instruments one more time. Behind them, 50 new volunteers sat in their seats. These people had watched the first ship catch fire, but they still wanted to be part of history. Engineer Jun Seo was there again, along with Communications Officer Yujin. They all knew they might die, but they believed in what they were doing. All systems ready, Admiral, So-Young reported. Minho looked at the big red button that would start the new engine. This time he was not afraid. Ji-Woo's team had tested the new system hundreds of times. It worked perfectly every time. Begin the demonstration, he said calmly. The engine started with a sound like a gentle hum. The aliens in the hall expected to see Phoenix 2 shake and smoke like its predecessor had done. Instead, the ship sat perfectly still and quiet. Is it even working? Asked the tree-like alien. I do not see any flames or explosions. The energy readings on the monitoring screens began to climb, but they climbed smoothly and steadily. No wild fluctuations, no warning alarms, just clean, powerful energy building up inside the ship. Initiating faster-than-light sequence, So-Young announced. That was the last thing anyone heard from Phoenix 2 for the next 6 minutes. The ship simply vanished, not like the slow fade that alien ships used when they entered hyperspace, not like the bright flash that some species made when they jumped between dimensions. Phoenix 2 just stopped being there, as if it had never existed at all. The great hall fell completely silent. Even the aliens who had been preparing to leave stopped moving and stared at the empty space where the human ship had been. Where did it go? Whispered the bug-like creature. Chancellor Vextar's 4 eyes were wide with surprise. Scanner teams, locate the human vessel immediately. Technicians all over the space station began working frantically. Their most advanced sensors swept the area around the station. Long-range scanners reached out across the solar system. Deep, Space monitors checked for any sign of the missing ship. Nothing. Phoenix 2 had completely disappeared from the universe. Did it explode? Asked the purple alien nervously. There was no explosion, reported a technician. No debris, no energy signature, it is just gone. Minutes passed. The aliens began to whisper to each other in worried voices. Some of them looked scared. A few were starting to say that maybe humans were more dangerous than anyone had realized. Then, the impossible happened. Phoenix 2 reappeared, but it did not reappear where it had vanished from. Instead, it materialized at the very edge of the solar system, 12 billion miles away from the space station. The long-range scanners detected it first. Then the deep space monitors confirmed it. Phoenix 2 was sitting calmly in empty space, near the orbit of the farthest planet, as if it had always been there. That is impossible, breathed the Chancellor. The fastest ships in the galaxy would take 3 days to travel that distance. How long has it been since they disappeared? Asked the tree-like alien. A technician checked his instruments with shaking hands. 6 minutes and 14 seconds. The hall erupted in shocked voices. Aliens who had been laughing before were now talking in urgent, worried tones. Some of them were making calculations on their personal devices, trying to figure out how fast Phoenix 2 had traveled. Then something even more impossible happened. Phoenix 2 disappeared from the edge of the solar system and reappeared in the docking bay, right where it had started. The whole journey, 12 billion miles out and 12 billion miles back, had taken less than 7 minutes. Admiral Minho's voice came through the communication system, calm and professional as always. Phoenix 2 returning from test flight. All systems normal, all passengers healthy and safe. The docking bay doors opened, and the 50 human volunteers walked out. They were not burned or injured. They were not even tired. They looked like people who had just taken a short, pleasant trip. Ambassador Tejo stood up slowly. The great hall was so quiet he could hear his own heartbeat. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," he said. "Phoenix 2 has just completed a round trip to the edge of your solar system. Total travel time was 6 minutes and 43 seconds. Our passengers experienced no discomfort during the journey." Chancellor Vexitar stared at the human ambassador with all 4 of his glowing eyes. For the first time in his long life, he was completely speechless. "That speed is impossible," said the purple alien, but his voice was small and weak. "According to our calculations," Tejo continued, "Phoenix 2 traveled at approximately 400 times the speed of your fastest ships." The number hit the aliens like a physical blow. 400 times faster than their best technology. The humans had not just succeeded, they had made the entire galaxy's transportation system obsolete overnight. How? The Chancellor finally managed to ask. Tejo smiled politely. "We learned from our failures, Honored Chancellor. Sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to stop trying to copy what others have done and start thinking for yourself." In the docking bay, Phoenix 2 sat quietly, looking just as ugly and patched together as it had before. But now, the aliens understood that appearances could be very deceiving. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations had just been surpassed by a species they had considered primitive and backward. The humans had not just caught up, they had leaped far ahead of everyone else. As Ambassador Tejo walked out of the Great Hall, he could hear frantic conversations starting behind him. Aliens were calling their home planets, reporting the impossible thing they had just witnessed. The age of human space travel had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same again. 6 months after the demonstration that shocked the galaxy, Earth had become the most important planet in known space. Every day, ships from dozens of different alien civilizations arrived in Earth's orbit. They came carrying diplomats, scientists, traders, and sometimes spies. Director Haywan stood in her new office on the top floor of the Global Space Center. Through her window, she could see construction sites where humans were building new spaceships. Dozens of them, all using the revolutionary technology that Jiwoo had discovered. The ships still looked rough and ugly compared to alien vessels. They were covered with patches and cables and mismatched parts, but now everyone knew that looks did not matter. What mattered was performance, and human ships could outrun anything else in the galaxy. "Director Haywan," her assistant said, knocking. On the door. The Valaxian delegation is here for their appointment. Haywan smiled. The Valaxians were the same species that had laughed the loudest when Phoenix 1 caught fire. Now they wanted to buy human engine technology for their own ships. Send them in, she said. 3 Valaxians entered her office, their tentacles moving, nervously. Their leader was the same alien who had made jokes about human technology 3 years ago. Director Haywan, the Valaxian said, his voice much more respectful than it had been before. We are honored to meet with you. We hope we can discuss a trade agreement. What kind of trade? Haywan asked, though she already knew the answer. We would like to purchase your faster-than-light engine technology. We can offer you advanced materials, energy weapons, or star charts of unexplored regions. Haywan shook her head politely. I am sorry, but our engine technology is not for sale. The Valaxian's tentacles trembled with frustration. Please reconsider. We can offer you anything you want. Rare crystals, anti-gravity generators, even territory in our empire. The answer is still no, Haywan said firmly. But we would be happy to sell you transportation services. Our ships can carry your cargo or passengers anywhere in the galaxy. This was the new reality. Humans would not share their revolutionary technology, but they would use it to help other species. Earth was becoming the transportation hub of the galaxy, and every trip made them richer and more powerful. In her laboratory, Jiwoo was now the most famous scientist in galactic history. Alien researchers traveled across the universe just to meet her and ask questions about her discoveries. Today she was giving a lecture to a group of the galaxy's top physicists. They sat in her small meeting room. Creatures from dozens of different worlds, all trying to understand how humans had achieved the impossible. The key insight, Jiwoo explained, was realizing that imperfection can be better than perfection. Your species have spent thousands of years creating flawless materials and precise energy fields. That is impressive, but it is also limiting. A crystal-based alien raised one of its sharp appendages. But imperfect materials are unreliable. They cause failures and accidents. Yes, they do, Jiwoo agreed. But they also create possibilities that perfect materials cannot achieve. The random variations in our metals interact with our quantum fields in ways that your pure crystals never could. This seems like luck, not science, said another alien who looked like a walking cloud of gas. Jiwoo smiled. Maybe it is luck. But humans have always been good at taking advantage of lucky accidents. We call it creativity. The alien scientists wrote down everything she said, but Jiwoo knew they would never truly understand. They had been trained to think that there was only one right way to solve each problem. Humans had learned to find dozens of different solutions to the same challenge. Meanwhile, Admiral Minho was commanding the first human exploration fleet. 5 ships, all built with the new technology, were mapping star systems that no one had ever visited before. Navigator So Young worked at his side, just as she had on the first disastrous flight of Phoenix 1. New planet detected, So Young reported as they emerged from faster-than-light travel. Oxygen atmosphere, liquid water, possible signs of life. Minho looked at the beautiful blue and green world on his screen. How long would it take the fastest alien ship to reach this system from Earth? About 6 months, So Young calculated. And how long did it take us? 3 days. Minho nodded with satisfaction. Humans were exploring and claiming new worlds faster than any other species could follow. In a few years, human colonies would be scattered across the galaxy. The former passengers of the burning Phoenix 1 had all become heroes and leaders. Engineer Jun Seo was designing the first human space city. Communications officer Yu Jin was Earth's main translator for dealing with alien governments. Each of them remembered the day their ship caught fire, and each of them was proud that they had not given up. Back on Earth, Ambassador Tae-ho had been promoted to Galactic Affairs Minister. He now sat as a permanent member of the Galactic Council, representing not just humanity, but a new way of thinking about technology and progress. The same chamber where humans had once been mocked was now filled with aliens asking for human help. The Chancellor, who had dismissed Earth's first prototype, now treated every human representative with deep respect. Minister Tae-ho, Chancellor Vextar said during a recent council meeting, Your people have changed everything. Transportation, exploration, even our understanding of physics itself. How did you achieve so much so quickly? Tejo thought for a moment before answering. We failed, he said simply. I do not understand. We failed completely and publicly. Everyone saw our ship catch fire. Everyone laughed at us. But we did not let that failure stop us. We learned from it. We used it to become better. The Chancellor's 4 eyes blinked slowly. Most species would have given up after such a disaster. Most species are not human, Tejo replied. We are stubborn. When someone tells us something is impossible, we want to prove them wrong. When our technology fails, we do not throw it away. We fix it and make it stronger. Around the galaxy, human influence was growing every day. Human ships carried alien goods between distant stars. Human colonies were being established on worlds that had never seen intelligent life before. Human scientists were making discoveries that overturned centuries of alien knowledge. But perhaps the most important change was in how other species thought about failure. Young aliens were starting to question the old idea that everything had to be perfect from the beginning. Some of them were experimenting with rough, imperfect technologies like humans used. The galaxy was learning that sometimes the best solutions came from the most unexpected places. In her small laboratory where it all began, Jiwoo continued her work. She was older now, with more gray in her hair and deeper lines around her eyes. But her hands still moved with the same determination that had driven her to work through the night for years. On her desk sat a small piece of metal from the original, Phoenix 1. It was burned and twisted from the fire that had nearly ended humanity's dreams of reaching the stars. She kept it as a reminder that failure was not the end of the story. It was just the beginning. The galaxy had laughed at Earth's prototype. They had seen a crude, fire-prone ship built by primitive humans who barely understood their own technology. They had been wrong about everything except the fire. Phoenix 1 had indeed caught fire. But from those flames had risen something that no one had expected, a new age of space travel, led by the species everyone had underestimated. Humans had not just reached for the stars, they had claimed them.